there, my name is Daniel Franco and this is the Creating Synergy podcast, your business and leadership podcast where we speak to high-profile leaders and thinkers about their careers and dig deep by asking the questions we all want the answers to, uncovering their stories, strategies, leadership lessons and their secrets to success. Welcome back to the Creating Synergy podcast. Today I am sitting with the one and only Kylie Morton. Thank you for coming back on the show. Last time we had you 2020 in July in the heart of COVID.
Yes.
This is when we were running podcasts out of my house because everything was shut down. So you got a tour of the Franco residence, but thank you for coming back. I think I said to you early this morning that planted a seed in you were working with BAE that when we had you on, and you were heading up their change management in Australia, and I said that planted a seed because now you find yourself working with us.
I know, I do. It's really exciting.
It is. Yeah. We're very happy to have you in the team. There's been a lot's happened in the past 2 years. You've gone through a whole amount of change yourself personally and growth and decided to come over to SynergyIQ. Let's just do a bit of a recap. Where have you come from? For those who may not have heard the original podcast, it was one of our most downloaded podcasts for a long time there. It's been overtaken now, unfortunately.
Right.
But
well,
sorry.
Look, I can work on that.
But we talked about the neuroscience of change back then, and we're going to be talking a lot about change again today. You've had some thought bubbles go off in your head and you're like, Dad, I want to come on the show. We couldn't wait to get you on. Yeah. So can we just do a bit of a recap?
Okay.
Who is Kylie? Where have you come from? How did you get to? And how come you're so passionate around this change world?
All right. So actually they're called bus bubbles now officially because I had this, wonderful smashing together of ideas on the bus on the way into the office, and that's why I called it. So bus bubbles
it's the monotone sound of the bus.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. So where have I come from up to here? Well, I guess I started out my career, back when I was 15 years old, working in retail. And working across a huge number of different sort of functions and areas in a supermarket. So I got so many different experiences and I got exposed to so many different people, and I absolutely loved the variety. And I think that's why I love what I do so much now, because the variety is still there. I get to work for so many wonderful organisations and so many great people and so many different projects and challenges. And I think that's what makes you kind of get up every day and go, oh gosh, what's going to happen now? So I think that, that's kind of like an origin. But what happened over my career is I got really invested in listening to people whinge about their work, and going, oh gosh, this is, this process doesn't work, or this feels like it takes too long. And realising that I had a sort of a skill set in being able to help people work through how they might change that, and take some personal accountability for improving their own work. And that really grew into this sort of passion for making big changes in larger organisations. So my career path took me from, slicing meat in a service deli and making donuts through to, improving supply chain processes in large cosmetics companies, and then into defence and pharmaceuticals, all circling around process improvement, business analysis, and then ultimately change management. And I think it was that actual trigger into change management that made my heart sing, because up until that point I trained as a Lean Six Sigma black belt, and it was very technical, and it was all about these wonderful, improvements to processes and the way that we would work, but they just wouldn't stick. It didn't seem to matter how great the idea was or how much sense the improvement would make. Somehow we still had people who were really disgruntled. Yeah. So I was given an opportunity to join BAE Systems Australia and lead the development of their change management capability. And I started off as a single-digit change manager and worked through to building a capability of a team that was, I think at its height, around 15 change managers. But also,
It's like its own little business in itself, isn't it?
Yeah,
Within BAE.
yeah. It actually it kind of operated a little bit like an internal consultancy, which was really nice because we had this team, this kind of home base where we could all come and find like-minded practitioners. But then, we were all out in the business working with different projects and different challenges. And what that meant was the collaboration was really exciting because we were able to bring back all those experiences and those ideas.
So how did you, can I just touch on the BAE thing? You grow from 0 to 15 people. What was it that BAE saw in you to grow that team? Like why, and the importance of change within it? I think that's a pretty forward-thinking approach.
Yeah. I actually think that it was one of those classic kind of tipping point types of scenarios because I, worked kind of diligently for a good couple of years, first of all on my own and then with, another change manager that had joined the team. And really the approach that we took was just to kind of get in there and try to make a bit of a difference, make a project a little bit better than it would have been if they didn't have change management support. And when I talk about change management support, what I really mean is somebody to help think through the complexity of what they were trying to do, to really simplify that and to bring in the consideration of different perspectives that people might have about what was trying to be achieved and create a process that, enabled people to work through that and to make sense of that in a way that increased not just adoption, which is ultimately the objective of change management, but also increased the experience, the positive experience for people. So what actually happened was, we had one small project that was an office move and, it impacted 200 staff. It wasn't a big initiative. It wasn't a big move. But we did these small things like handwritten notes when people arrived at the new office and lots of preparation and lots of thought put into, okay, well, what would the experience of somebody moving from their old office to this office really look like if we were to make it as great as possible? And we put the thought into that. It was a good experience. And then those 200 people, probably not all of them, but, many of them then shared how great it was. And all of a sudden that one project became a little bit of a beacon for, okay, well, this is what happens when you do this well. And I think that, on reflection, I think that was the tipping point because from there we started getting lots and lots more engagement from the business and in interest in what change management could do and achieve. And that's kind of when the team really started to grow from there,
And so, kudos for that. To manage and lead a team and grow the capability Australia-wide, because it wasn't just here in South Australia, was it? It was Australia-wide team. So well done. We're very happy to have poached you, and that's the right word. We didn't really. It wasn't so much of a poach, but we became quite close in our relationship and working relationship, and we're both in the same world. SynergyIQ, obviously known for their ability in change. We couldn't quite wait to get you on board and help you come across and help us grow our capability and our strength. And you've just gone from strength to strength and almost at a thought leader. Well, you are at a thought leader position now, aren't you? Where your voice is sought after and people are always keen to learn a little bit more about yourself and the work that you're doing in the change space. When we were preparing for this podcast, you were talking to me about some of the myths that are really happening in the world, and you have a real unapologetic approach to change and change management. Can you unpack that for us a little bit? You was like, I'm pretty strong that I want to bust some myths here on this show. So I'd love for you to.
Okay, the answer to this question for me links to why I'm here as well at SynergyIQ. So, I have an eternal gratitude to BAE Systems and the people who supported me and the team that we had there. I amassed a huge range of experiences that make me who I am today. But there is something really lovely about working for an organization whose core capability is what you're passionate about. Yeah. So, BAE was an engineering organization, and so therefore that's, project management and engineering, that's their passion. Whereas SynergyIQ, we're passionate about great change. Yeah. So I get to come here and, play around with all these ideas and thoughts that I've had for a really long time and have the backing behind that. So thank you so much, actually, for bringing me in, allowing me to have that opportunity. And so some of the things that I recognised was, I think I've always been passionate about improving work, and I've been sort of dogmatic about the value that people play in that process. But I haven't always, I guess, had the space to explore that as much as I would like. And the unapologetic bit for me now comes from being in a place where I believe that the way we're managing change is making us unhappy.
Ooh. Is that the mic drop moment?
Yeah.
Okay. As in, not we as in SynergyIQ, as in organisations in the world, yeah.
Yeah, and so one of the things that's really wonderful is when I think about, being in the change space, probably over the last 10 years, you can really see an increase in the uptake of change management in organisations. More and more organisations recognise how important it is. There's better frameworks around it. It's growing, right? Mm-hmm. You now, Google change management and you come up with so much more than you did 5 years ago. There's no doubt about that. And so what it's doing is it's improving outcomes for organisations because we are a little better at it now. We know how important it is to plan and to communicate effectively and to make sure people have all the, training and learning pathways that they need to adopt new skills. But it just doesn't seem to be improving happiness at work. People are still very disgruntled about change. We talk about things like change fatigue and resistance and risk. And, I think it's really sad how many conversations we have with leaders who are doing really exciting things for their organisations who come at it from a point of, well, this is going to be really hard. This is going to be really difficult. I need to prepare, all that sort of, you can feel the shift in the conversation. They're excited about what they want to do, but actually getting it from, an idea to an implemented solution or, change in mindset or culture feels like it's going to be a real hard slog. And I think that's a really sad thing. We don't improve businesses just like for the sake of it. We improve them because we want to make work better and we want to improve outcomes for people and for our customers and our communities. And so I think that what has happened is that as we have created more awareness and more structure around the importance of change management, we've unfortunately started to view it as a tool to prevent terrible things from happening rather than a tool for driving great things.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I want to ask you around if it's you're saying it's part of the ecosystem that makes people unhappy. It's not just the change that's making. That's coupled with leadership's capability or lack of capability to manage the change. It's coupled with projects which aren't that meaningful. Is it the whole kit caboodle, or is it you think fundamentally it's the process and the way we're managing change is causing this to be?
Yeah, I think it's the process.
Yeah, wow.
I think our leaders, and so I guess again, right, or another apologetic thing.
Yeah.
I have a deep appreciation for humanity and how amazing we are and what we can achieve. And what I see is when we go and talk to people about changes they want to make in their organisation or leaders who are struggling to get their people on board. It's almost like we now expect there to be trouble. We expect this to be a hard thing. And so I don't think it's an ecosystem. I don't think it's individual capability. I think what it is that we now have change management as a structured approach in our organisations that is fundamentally now skewed towards looking for negativity. And what we know from gratitude science, positive psychology, is that if you continue to look for negative things, if you continue to look for the things that are scary and difficult, then you will establish a pattern in your brain that associates scary and difficult things with change. So what I'm saying is, I think it's the way we approach it. I think we've lost sight that...
Okay. Yes, you're talking from a meta point of view.
Yeah.
So can we call out some of those thought processes? Like, what are those negative things that people are looking for? So people listening in can go, oh shit, yeah, that is exactly what we do.
Yep.
And that is the negative thought process that we go through.
Okay, so I think the first and most obvious one is resistance.
Okay,
so
we're about to embark on a change.
Yeah.
I already know everyone's going to be resistant to this.
Fake news. They are not. They're not going to be, like, resistance to change is this thing that has bothered me for a really long time. And it's, it's all over change management language and frameworks, is that, we have to look for the resistance, and we have to plan to manage it and to mitigate it. We're going to have to coach people through that process, and there'll be people who are on the bus and people who are off the bus. It feels like combat, right? And so, I think that when we think about implementing a change, if the first thing we think of is how people are going to react negatively, how they're going to resist, then you're gearing up for a fight, right? Alternatively, if we were to reframe that and say, okay, I want to do this thing in my organisation, or I have to lead this change for my people inside an organisation. And if we were to think about it less from a perspective of how will people resist, and even just a very subtle shift and start talking about, well, how will they react? You think differently straight away, because resistance is a negative reaction.
Yeah.
But reactions can also be positive.
Yeah.
So they may very well resist.
So you start down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
You start already at the foot of the rabbit hole that is negative. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm saying, language has power, and one of the words that we use an awful lot in change management is resistance. And I think that we should flip that. I think we should be talking about reactions.
Yeah.
And the spectrum of reactions, and not just why people or how people would react, because we actually know why they react. There's a biology behind it, which I talked about in the last podcast that I was on. There's a biology behind why people react to change. We're designed to react to change, or else we would never have evolved to the point where we are now.
Yeah.
It's an important process. But reacting to change is something that doesn't necessarily have to result in a positive outcome for a leader or for an individual. It can just be a process that somebody goes through in order to help them make sense of a change that will occur for them in an organisation. So I want to flip it. Like, I don't want to talk about resistance anymore. I want to talk about reactions.
So if we talk about the resistance piece for a sec, because in my head I'm talking to myself saying I start off with that so I can plan on how to or I can plan on what I'm going to do so they aren't resistant to change. So you're just saying, let's actually flip that on its head and just go straight into how are we going to get people on board with this? Is that kind of the...
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, if you think about the science behind that approach, you are associating negativity and negative outcomes with change immediately.
Yeah.
Right? That's the pathway that you're building, because that's what you're looking for first.
Yeah, it's the language you're using with
and your
the
mindset.
Project team and
Yeah, like if I start thinking about how this is how people will react rather than how they resist, then that opens you up to a range of different reactions, positive or negative. It starts getting you thinking about how you might leverage more positive reactions to help people who... Right, so I'm not saying don't consider that there may be negative reactions.
Yeah, okay. I think you're right. Yeah, I think for me the light bulb just went off in my head then when you said we're actually... with the first process of managing the resistance, we are only thinking negatively of how we can get people on board. Like our thought is, how can we actually take the people from good to great that are already thinking positively? Okay, it makes sense.
Yeah. So I think so resistance is one of those areas.
Yeah. So going back to those negative thought,
Yes. The other area that I think I see this most in is also in looking for impact of change. So, like, when I say the word impact to you, what are some of the words that you might Give me some synonyms.
Like effect that it has on me, the impact meaning the potential revenue. I'm thinking from a business perspective, impact from a revenue perspective, impact from people engagement.
Wind back a little bit further.
Okay.
What does the word impact mean? Think about impact.
I think of explosion.
Explosion.
Yeah, an asteroid sort of hitting impacting it. Yeah.
I mean,
all the above, right?
Yeah.
It's a negative thing as well.
Yeah, it is. And so if words have power, right? And there's a quote that says something like, speech has power, something about words starting as sounds and ending as deeds. I'll find what the quote is.
Yeah.
It's a really good one. But if we're using words that elicit a link towards a negative thing, once again, resistance is negative, impact is negative. It's collision. Like if you Google search it comes up with collision and smash and all those types of things.
Yeah.
But what we need to be doing is looking not at impact, but at significance. How significant is this change for this organisation or for this team or for this individual? And again, if I ask you to think about significance, you'll think about different things. You'll start to think about meaning and you'll start to think about extent, and you'll start
purpose
exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying we don't think about impact, because we do need to think about, particularly if it's going to impact negatively on somebody, we do need to think about it. What I'm saying is I want to start retraining our change brains.
Yeah.
Like I want a positive change practice that starts positive first, because then we start to build a pathway in our brains that says change is good. Like we can do this,
If I'm sitting there and I'm starting a project and I ask myself, what is the significance of this project? Is that binary? It's in the sense that it's got a big significance, a high significance within this organisation, or it's a small significance? Is that it? Is that the only?
I guess the answer to that question lies in what makes something significant.
Okay.
So for me, something that's significant has significant meaning. Like it means a lot to me. I think it's important. It's worthy of my attention. So the scale of significance will be different for me than it would be for you.
Yeah, okay.
And I think that's...
And depending on who's in that project and which stakeholders and all the
exactly.
above.
Yeah. And so it sort of, it links to that stakeholder assessment piece where, we're not just looking for how or what opportunities are there for this stakeholder to grumble about this. We're actually now starting to explore, okay, well, what makes this important for that stakeholder? What's meaningful to them? Yeah,
okay. So it's the significance of all the aspects within the project, not just the significance of the project within the organisation.
Yeah. So if you think even those two very small examples, impact, resistance, they're one of the big features of a change management process and planning. And we're using negativity first. That negativity bias is in our change practice already.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to, like, that's the bit, that's my bus bubble.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not about ignoring where there's risk, because you need to understand where it is so that you can plan for it effectively. But it's just about not making that the first place we go.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I want to challenge you a little bit.
All right.
This is where you're...
Because, we don't do that. Do we?
Well, I think where I'm going is many would argue that change management has a really positive impact on their business, and, going from not doing change to implementing change management. It's had some significant, from bottom line's point of view, projects are being delivered, the journey's not as bad. And now you're coming out and saying people are unhappy, we're using negative words.
Yep.
Is there a contradiction in that?
No, I think that there's an acknowledgement that it definitely has improved outcomes. Okay. So,
well, here you are, an advocate for change,
correct.
aren't you?
Yeah, and if I think about projects that I've worked on that have had no change management versus projects now that do have it, outcomes are absolutely improved. But what I'm not seeing is the type of improvement that you would expect. You would expect that if we were applying structured change management to our projects, that we would see better outcomes for people, because that's what change management is. It's a people-centered process. And I'm not seeing that. What I am seeing is people who are still unhappy in workplaces. And I know that there's multi-factors around that.
Yeah.
But fundamentally that comes down to their experience at work.
Yeah.
And if most organisations are changing things in their businesses right now.
Well, everyone's changing.
Exactly.
That's why we're flat out.
Yeah, that's right. So, you'd be sort of remiss to go, oh, well, change management as the way we do it in organisations is not having an impact on that sort of, employee engagement. It does have an impact. People are disengaged. They are unhappy. I think there was a recent study that showed that, 30% of people are unhappy at work and are feeling burnt out.
Yeah.
We have leaders all the time coming to us saying, there's too much change and we're tired, we're fatigued. Change fatigue is another, thing that just really gets to me because we're designed to change.
Yeah.
We're good at it. We're really good at it. And COVID is an absolutely wonderful example of how good we are when we need to change.
Well, remember that? Do you remember that survey that came out in COVID on LinkedIn where it was what sparked the digital transformation in your company? Was it your CIO, CTO, CEO, or COVID? And
exactly.
And COVID-19 was
Yeah.
So we're talking about myth busting. You said you want to come on and bust some myths, and you just said we're not improving in change management. We're a change management company. We work with businesses, complex change, and taking them through that journey, enabling the change, managing the change, all the above. There's a company that was established back in 2001, I think, ProSci.
Yeah, I think they're a little older than that. Yeah, but I think that the framework. It became much more.
So it's been around for a while.
Yeah.
And you're saying we've not improved because there's this myth that we see it all the time.
Yeah.
And we're not bagging ProSci at all. I don't want to do that. But there's this myth that you need a ProSci accreditation to be a change manager. And now you're saying that you are not seeing improvement and everyone, the ProSci have a pretty good monopoly on the market. Is there a link in that? What are you seeing?
All right. Okay, so let me clarify.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I'm not seeing an improvement in change management.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so frameworks like ProSci have brought into organizations a structured approach to going from idea to implementation and improving the way that we do that from a people perspective. So that absolutely has occurred.
Yeah.
What I'm saying though is that if we were managing change in a way that was creating good experiences for all people, then we would also be seeing change leaders and change enablers having great experiences as well. But we're not. What we're seeing is change managers who are really burnt out, and beaten around in organizations. And we're seeing project managers who are fatigued, and we're seeing change leaders who are fatigued, and we're seeing people who have great ideas not able to get them through to implementation. So I think what I'm saying is change management has improved some of the outcomes, but it's not enough because we're not seeing improvements in engagement, and we're not seeing improvements in happiness at work, and we're not seeing all of those things that I think could be attributed to better experiences of change in organizations if all roles were having better experiences.
Yeah.
So what I would like to see is, we've almost gone down the same path with change management that I think we may have gone down with project management, is that we've become too rigid. We've become too structured now. We've got this cookie cutter, start here, finish there type of approach that, I know that there are seasoned practitioners who move within and around that, right? So I'm not saying that everybody is just, mindlessly following a ProSci framework. Yeah. But there are lots of organisations who are doing that.
Yep.
And it is not improving outcomes. What I want to see is a positive change practice that allows us to untangle complexity in a way that helps people make sense of change rather than having, it kind of forced upon them, and creates a great experience for all of the people who are involved in it, not just the end users.
The making sense part is the part that kind of just jumped out at me then when you were speaking.
Yep.
I'm trying to figure out why it jumped out at me. I think we really when we work with our clients and we take them on a journey, I think the big part of our approach is to help the leaders make sense of the change. You've often used that in a lot of your talks and your writing and all the above. Can you touch on the sense-making piece and why that is important for leaders to think about that?
Yeah, okay. So just reflecting on, fatigued change leaders, if we consider that one of the contributing factors to leaders feeling like change is overwhelming for them, I think a large part of that is because we've confused what their role is in leading change. So we talk about change leaders, and actually what I think we've tried to do is turn them into cheerleaders. So we're asking them now to, really, get behind the change and get everyone excited about the change. And I don't think that's actually their job. And I think that's why we have so much kind of apathy and fatigue in that area. If leaders were asked not to be a cheerleader of change, which even in itself, like just the language that you use there, feels like a lot of work, right? There's a lot of energy behind that. Especially if you don't necessarily feel that excited about this particular change. That's a big ask. But if I was to say, actually, no, your role as a leader is not to get excited about this change and convince everybody how good it is. Your role is to help the people who report to you, the people that you lead, to make sense of that change for themselves, to help them understand the significance of it for themselves. Because as we said, what's significant for me might be less significant for you or more or different.
Yep.
But to help them understand the significance for themselves, and then ultimately to find a place where they can either support that change or make a decision not to support that change, which is always an option.
Yeah.
Right? But I think flipping the role and saying, no, actually your job is not to get too excited about this. Your job is just to help your people find a way where they can understand what this means for them.
Yeah.
I think that's where that is. So and we're developing change leadership frameworks and skills that are based on that skill set of sense making. So, how do I take my people through a process, facilitate a process for them that enables them to make sense of it? And that really looks like creating opportunities or space for people to react, to have that initial reaction to change, which will happen. And understanding what those types of reactions might actually look like. You need to have a deep knowledge of how you as a leader react to change if you're going to be able to do that.
Yep.
And also pay attention to your people and how they will likely react to change in order for you to create an appropriate amount of space for it to happen. So there's a knowledge piece there. So leaders should invest a little time, because it doesn't take a lot of time, but a little time in understanding how do human beings react to change? Yeah. What's the response? And what does that look like? And what is it likely to look like for my people? And then there's kind of, there's other parts to that. So once you've created that space for the initial reaction, then there's two other parts, which is your role as a leader is to make the information that's available about this change meaningful for your people, because you're going to get like generic corporate spin from the project team or the communications team that doesn't often resonate with individual teams. It doesn't hit the meaning for them because it doesn't link to their particular part in the puzzle or their purpose as a team or to their team culture. So translating those messages in a way that's meaningful is probably the first thing that leaders need to be able to do.
Yep.
And then the second part is enabling an exchange. So what we know is that change is actually a social process. I don't adopt change often because one person said it's a good idea. I'm not going to take my leader's word for it, even if I have a deep level of respect for that person. Yeah. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go and talk to everyone. I'm going to go and talk to all of my team members and I'm going to see what they think, and I'm going to use that information to make my own decisions. So a leader, their role is actually not to convince the individual. The role of a leader is to enable good, strong team relationships that mean that people can go and talk to others in a safe space and get those perspectives and then use those perspectives to make their own decision. So all of a sudden, in 2 key areas where, often we're asking leaders to get out there and rah a change, I'm saying don't do that. I'm saying read the information that's available and make it meaningful for your team. Translate it. And the only way you can do that is if you know your team really well. So you need to invest
so your
in time.
leadership skills come into it.
Exactly. And the second thing that you need to do is to enable appropriate exchange of information between your own team members. So your role is to create good team environments, create good team relationships, make sure that they can support each other, make sure that there's appropriate connection opportunities.
Trust.
Yeah, right. So it takes the spotlight off of a leader.
Yeah.
It's not all about the leader-employee relationship. It's about the leader's role to create the conditions for people to change.
Yeah.
And then the other sort of 2 pieces is all around, well, if I want my people to see that this is something that's good for our organisation, then how can I role model that? So if I'm grumbling about it, if I'm reading the corporate spin and going, look, I don't really know about this, et cetera, then obviously my people are going to pick up on that. So before you embark on any form of leadership related to a change, there's some soul searching to do around, well, how am I going to commit to this? What does it mean for me? So the sense-making piece is not just for their people, but also for yourself as a leader. So the role modelling is really important, and that's, holding the mirror up and really looking at how well you're doing that is probably the first step there. And then the last thing really is just to keep people moving through that process. Just keep repeating and keep creating the opportunities and keep, unlocking the barriers, listening to your people, creating opportunities for dialogue rather than monologue. And I think that's what we've got a little bit wrong, actually, is that we communicate outwards, but that's not what's needed for change. For change to be successful, we have to create a social process where leaders are actually responsible for facilitating that. And if you take that as your role, rather than being a cheerleader of change, then it flips. It does the same. It's the same as what I'm talking about with language. It flips the responsibility, the type of responsibility I have. I don't need to put myself out there so much. I don't need to invest so much outward energy. What I need is to invest inward, and I need to invest in creating opportunities for my people.
Creating that culture of change.
Yeah.
I want to just touch on the role of a leader within all this. And there's a 2-pronged approach to this question, right? So we can go either way, but I want to stick on the sense-making stuff. So one of the myths around change management is it's digital, right? There's the digital aspect of it, change management, the project space, and people can make sense of that quite easily. We're putting in a change, it's digital, that's an easy sense-making part. What we know to be true is the change aspect is organisational, right? So the toughest parts to make sense of change is within the organisation and decisions that are made, the strategy, aligning it to the strategy, where a leader sits there and goes, actually, I can't make sense of this. I actually don't agree with it. What's the role of the leader then when they're really struggling to make sense of it? How do they then depict it to this is probably more of a leadership question. While leading change, how do you support and deliver on a change that the executive team or whoever it is have said, this is what we're doing, this is where we're going, and this is what I expect you to deliver, that isn't going to be a good outcome for your team and isn't going to be a good outcome for the community?
Oof, that's a really tough question. I think there are very few changes that organisations make which represent that scenario, though.
It's probably a minority, but maybe I went a bit extreme with saying it's not working for I think what I'm saying is how do I as a leader work with my team, create a culture of change, create a situation where I'm not going to be the cheerleader, but I'm going to allow you the space when we all actually don't really agree with what they're doing.
Okay. So if you're in a space where you don't agree with the decisions that have been made,
Yes.
it is likely because you don't understand the context behind that decision.
Okay.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I believe there's a personal accountability here. If you find yourself in a position where you go, this makes no sense to me, I don't get it, don't sit there and feel like a victim.
And grumble about it.
Go find out why. Go ask those questions that you need.
Manage change up almost.
Yes, exactly. And so a lot of leaders will find themselves in this situation where they'll say, okay, I've been told we're doing this, and their people will react to that and go, not sure about that. I feel like that's going to be a bad idea. This could happen and that could happen, because don't forget, we have a negativity bias towards change, right?
Yeah, correct.
So we're already pre-programmed not to go, okay, this could work, because we're programmed to go, this probably won't work, right? So that happens. The leader feels overwhelmed. The answer there is to go, okay, let me take all those concerns to someone who can give me those answers. Let me go ask people. Maybe you have to ask 10 people. But don't sit there and go, I don't have the answers to that. Sorry.
Yeah.
End of.
Take accountability.
Yeah. So, and you may still find that you don't get the answers you want. Let's all be frank. We've all worked in organisations where, decisions have been made that we don't understand or that do not make sense to us, even when we found out all the context behind it. Then there's a personal decision about whether or not you're willing to support that. But like I said, I would deeply challenge that there are many circumstances where if you ask the right questions, that you wouldn't uncover the reason behind the change and the meaning behind it, and therefore start to understand how it could benefit.
Yeah. I think there's the word sense making means you're going to deep dive into something, isn't it? Right? You can't. Sense making is not surface level. So
one of the barriers to sense making is this culture we have of feeling weird about asking questions.
Yeah, true.
And so there's a skill set there to develop. And how do I ask questions about a change that's in a way that is constructive and not combative?
Yeah.
Rather than saying, I don't understand that, it makes no sense to me, you can ask, I'm struggling to understand the reason behind this. Can you tell me more? Can you tell me how you landed at this decision?
Yeah.
Asking those types of questions and building a skill set to constructively ask questions about these things that we don't understand will actually help us in the long run. But for some reason, we just shy away from it. We think that, it's not going to be responded well to. But I have very rarely found myself in a situation where if I've asked a question that's been thoughtful and well constructed, that I haven't got an answer that gave me perspective.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. You, in your whole sense making, and this is a curious question, in the whole sense making aspect, the idea of sense making is to deep dive and break things down into smaller components so I can understand it. You're a big believer of systems thinking. Yeah. Is that what you're talking about when you talk about that?
Yeah, they're very similar, basically the same thing.
Okay.
In order to make sense of something, you usually need a skill set in systems thinking.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you believe systems thinking is fundamental.
Yep.
In this whole,
yeah, I think.
Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, I can.
And but start off firstly with what is systems thinking for those who might not understand.
Okay, so I'm not a systems thinking expert. I cannot give you like a proper definition. There are lots of different systems thinking frameworks and approaches that are out there that you can go and Google and learn heaps about systems thinking. But for me, systems thinking is actually the way in which we think about a situation and we gain understanding of it, right? The whole thing. So it's about understanding the complexity in a situation. That's what systems thinking is.
So can you give us an example of how you would systems think about, I don't know, a recipe or something? Like, is that the...
Ooh, okay. So let's systems think a recipe. Yeah. Okay, what are we going to cook?
I don't know, plate of pasta.
A plate of pasta. Okay, all right. So we want to cook a plate of pasta.
I'm so hungry. We're doing this over lunchtime. This is a nightmare. All right, keep going.
All right. Okay. Let's give it a crack. I haven't done this before, so let's try this. Okay.
Or do you have a better example?
No, let's do it. Okay. Let's give it a crack.
All right,
we'll see if it works. So, all right. So we want to cook a plate of pasta. So you come to me and say, Kylie, your challenge for today is to cook a plate of pasta. The first thing I'm going to do is go, okay, well, what kind of pasta am I cooking? Am I cooking spaghetti? Yep. Am I cooking lasagna? Because they're very different.
They are.
And if I
have a preference.
You have which one?
Oh, I don't know now. I do. I'm a spaghetti boy.
Spaghetti.
Yeah. Lasagna's good too.
What kind of sauce am I cooking?
I don't know. I'm just hungry. Anyway, keep going. All right.
What kind of sauce am I going to make with this pasta?
Yeah.
With this spaghetti? Because now I've decided, I've narrowed it down.
Yeah, red sauce, white sauce.
Yep, red sauce, white sauce. So I'm clear that Dan has asked me to cook spaghetti with red sauce.
Okay.
He has not asked me to make lasagna. So that means I don't need to worry about making bechamel. Okay?
Yep.
So what I'm doing there is looking at the boundaries of what you've asked me to do. Okay?
Beautiful.
The next thing is I'm going to go, okay, well, but where am I going to cook it? Like, am I cooking it in a kitchen? Am I cooking it at your house or am I cooking it at my house? Because if I'm cooking it at your house, you've got a whole different setup to me, and I'll probably take a little bit longer because I have to find everything. Am I cooking it for lunch or for dinner? Because
it's a different type of pasta.
Yeah, that's
right. It's a different amount as well.
It's a different amount of pasta.
Does it go with wine? Does it not?
Yeah, and also, that means that I have to think about, well, how much time do I have to prepare? Okay, so what I'm looking at is the context of cooking pasta. And then the next thing is, okay, well, if I cook this spaghetti with red sauce in Dan's house for dinner, okay, what's the impact of that? The impact is I've got plenty of time to go out shopping for the ingredients because I'm not cooking it until dinner time. So that means that I don't have to get panicked about trying to make sure I have everything all prepped and ready before lunch. It also means I have to drive to your house and I live on the opposite side of town, so I have to factor that in to my day.
Yeah.
It also means I'm likely to get better wine because I think you have a better wine selection than I do.
You do.
But it also means, and this is the next part, that I have to consider the perspectives, the audience. You are likely to be a little bit more discerning about the quality of your spaghetti.
I think I am, but
my kids.
I absolutely will be. Correct.
So
it's good quality stuff.
So you might, react differently.
Yeah, you're right.
To me cooking this pasta than if I was.
I've never thought about that. I've never thought that someone. Yeah, you're right. Someone's viewpoint. It's perspective, isn't it?
Yeah. So the systems thinking approach, right? What I just did was I just used systems thinking, very high level, to think about the task of cooking pasta. And so you've given me a very generic task.
So how would that apply to a change management piece within a business?
Yeah, that's right. So at change managers, that's actually what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're applying that same kind of systems thinking framework to the change you're asking them to support. They're thinking through, okay, well, what are you changing and what are you not changing? And what's the context in which you are making that change? How are people likely to view that change because of the perspectives?
Yeah.
As a result of how they might be impacted by that change. Notice I've used the word impact, which I think we should start using significant, actually.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we're thinking through all of that, and often that's invisible work with a change manager, which is an unfortunate thing because it's so valuable.
It's the most important. It's the front end of change.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like so often when we go and work with clients, we get called halfway through the project when that is supposed to systems thinking piece up front is supposed to have already been done.
Yeah.
And then we've got to go and backtrack and then almost.
Well, and what a tragedy that often we don't get the opportunity to backtrack. We get told to just keep going.
Just keep going.
And
we've got no time. We've got to keep going.
Yeah, and we're missing so much of the information that we need to do that task efficiently.
So change should be thought about right up front.
Yes, without doubt. And your, if you had systems thinking capability in your organisation across all of the roles that enable and lead change, then that thinking can be practiced almost like subconsciously. I think that way and I don't even know I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Like it's just part of how I go about planning for a change. So imagine now if your project managers had that same thinking process and your leaders had that same thinking process. So when you asked me that question a little bit earlier about I'm a leader and I've got this change and it doesn't make sense to me, well, go apply a systems thinking approach.
Yeah.
Go find out what it is and what it isn't and the context of the decision that's been made and the impact it's likely to have and the way people think about it. Go ask those questions.
So I'm going to elevate the role of change in this here, right? Because what I'm hearing is, in fact, if the change part is supposed to be done up front, and we've got to have this systems thinking approach up front, then effectively the person who's managing the change or leading the change or partnering on the change, whatever word you want to use at that, enabling the change piece right up front, they're almost selecting the project manager, isn't it? Like, so one of the myths of change is that the project manager selects the change manager and then the change manager supports the project. But what I'm hearing is actually the change person's the first person on the roll. They're the one that is actually doing all the research and understanding what is that boundary, what is the context. Let's put the right project manager on this project. Is that correct? Or am I off the mark?
I think you're partially on the mark. Okay. I think actually what could be really helpful is to think about change in two parts. There's the process of enabling change, which is where we do all of that systems thinking based work. And then there's the process of managing change-related activities, both of which are highly valuable and needed. But I think what we have done is we have placed the value of change management in the managing change-related activities side of things, where we said,
it's execution phase, isn't it?
I said, my change manager is only as good as the change management plan that they've written that I'm going to go put in a drawer, like and not use, right? Or the training plan, or the comms plan. That isn't the value. The value is in the work that was done up front to understand what you're trying to achieve and set it up for the best amount of success, to create great experiences for people and to develop plans that are true to that. Do you know? And so the plans and the activities that we then go about, executing upon, they don't even necessarily need to be done by a change manager. They can be done by your learning development staff, and they can be done by your communications staff, and they can be done by, the people that have to adopt that change. But I think we've forgotten. I think we've misplaced the role of a change manager. The change manager, I think, the most amount of value they can bring is to help you as an organisation make sense of change and gather all of the insights that you need to set yourself up for success. And all of the great change managers that I've worked with, and I've worked with some incredible change managers, that's where you see them light up too. They get really excited about doing that because they know that that's where all of the richness is, and that's where
it's the problem solving stuff.
Correct. Yeah.
You can hear the passion like coming through your voice, which is really like endearing that you are so passionate about. It almost sounds like you want to create a movement for this. Like it sounds like you're on this path to change the viewpoint on the way change is done in these organisations. I want to just sort of touch on that movement and how do we get out of the world of where change is viewed upon negatively? Like how do we move forward? How do we get people thinking this is what we need?
Okay, I think what needs to happen first and foremost is we do need to create awareness and recognition of where the value really is. And it's just one of those unfortunate things that, we place value in things we can hold, okay? And so if we were to, start talking inside of our organisations about the value of information and insight, that's actually far more important to us, the process by which we gather that and the decisions that we make by using that information. That's what's valuable. Then we start to shift away from, I don't care, I just want a change plan. Because if I have a change plan, then I can tick a box. And I'm successful.
It's a linear type thinking.
Exactly.
Move away from that.
And it's funny because when you look at, different kind of surveys into, where organisations see challenge, their biggest challenges are in untangling complexity and their biggest challenges are in creating leaders who are able to engage with their people and to, help support them through change. Their challenges are in adapting to changing conditions, and to being able to do that quickly. And the good thing about systems thinking as an approach for change is that it enables you, if you do it, it's brain training. If you do it often enough, if you think through that process often enough, then you start doing it subconsciously and you start doing it more quickly and you start making better decisions. So I think the way to create the movement is for organisations, because this is the thing, right? This approach may not be for every organisation. I'm talking about creating positive change practices that value upfront effort, right? Not every organization is going to be open to that.
Well, because they're very reactive. Is that
correct?
Yeah.
Exactly. But I think that like all movements, they start with early adopters.
Yeah.
I think this happens when organizations who can already see that the way they're doing things is not working right now, and that they want to try something different, and that they want their people to have better experiences, and they want to have better cultures, and they want to start creating capability to change. I think that those organizations need to put their hand up and give us a call.
Yeah.
And that's how we start creating a movement.
Oh. So this movement, though, are we going to hit a brick wall when we think about how change has been poorly done in the past, right? There's almost like the post-traumatic stress element to this, isn't it? Like you go in and there's a leader that says, we're about to embark on change, and you get the eye rolls, you get the complaints, you get, that's never going to work, you get all these things that pop up instantly, right? How do we overcome that brick wall or that hurdle within this movement? How do we, as leadership team within organisations or a SynergyIQ or whoever it is that's leading this movement, push through that post-traumatic stress almost? Yeah.
Okay. Well, so there's a couple of different things that come to mind.
Yeah.
The first one, I read this study recently that was talking about where negative and positive memories are stored in our brain. And what they found is that they're stored in two completely different places. So if I think about something that's happened to me, a negative thing that's happened to me in the past, an area of my brain will light up. And if I think about something that's positive that's happened to me in the past, then a different area will light up. What they have found is that if you trigger a negative memory and then at the right time trigger a positive memory, then the effect of that positive memory diminishes how bright the negative memory shines permanently.
Yeah, neutralizes it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Makes it less of an, And so my hypothesis, it is just a hypothesis, I think, but I've seen it happen. So, I think there's something here, which is that if you create an opportunity for almost like corporate therapy for people to go, you know what, the way you did that last time was really terrible and I didn't like it. You didn't consider all of the factors. And, I want to make sure that doesn't happen again. And then we create an opportunity to say, okay, yeah, but what was good about it? What did we do that did work?
Yep.
How can we make sure that we do more of that and that we also mitigate and improve the things that we didn't get right last time? If you create even just that opportunity in your own team, right? It doesn't have to be organizational-wide, but just in your own team, then you will begin the shift in people because you're going to diminish the impact of those negative thoughts, negative memory from last time, and you're going to start to shift mindsets to a positive place. So this positive change practice starts to happen when leaders create an opportunity for their people to have a bit of a vent, but then keep them moving towards, okay, well, what do we do next?
Yeah.
How do we do this better? And so I think that's kind of one thing that we can do. I think the other thing is just acknowledging that it kind of takes a bit of time to build trust and being really transparent about that. So organisations, I think, that are ready to do change differently need to actually tell people that that's what they're doing. Yeah. And say, we know that we may not have done this well in the past and we're sorry for that. Yeah. But we're committing, that again, there's that, personally commit. We're committing to doing it differently and we're going to show you what that's going to look like and we'll build your trust over time.
And be realistic, I think. As I'm listening to that, it's not black and white. You don't say, we did it bad last time, therefore this time will be good. Yeah. This time will be better. The next time will be better again. Yeah. And it's this iteration piece. It's you don't turn the ship around overnight. It takes a few, So
so just back to that point, the example at BAE with the office move and that's one of the great tactics is that don't do this on big things. Yeah. Just do it better on small things. Yeah, and if there are enough small things, they'll build up eventually to a better experience overall.
Isn't that amazing how that just ties into with everything in life? Yeah. The book Atomic Habits is written on the back of starting with small things. Get up in the morning, start with 3 push-ups, followed by 3 squats.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
you build that habit.
Absolutely.
Right. And then all of a sudden you're running a marathon. Like it's just this building up of the process.
And I think that's what I'm trying to do here is we're amassing a wealth of knowledge about how to improve our health and well-being outside of work.
Yeah.
We're not applying that necessarily to our change practices. What we're doing is we're just, creating a framework and a bunch of tools and then having people in our organizations change managers who are highly skilled and highly passionate and not giving them the space to do their jobs really well.
Yeah.
That's what I think there's a huge opportunity there.
This can almost sound utopian, right?
Yeah, I know.
Where, just fix the mindset, guys. Like that's almost the attitude. And I don't mean to rubbish what you're saying, but there's going to be some organisations where this just won't work. What's the scenario then? Like where leadership is probably not at its greatest. Shifting mindset is going to be tough. There's some people who have been around for 40 years, they're like the way things have been done in the past. What happens in that space?
All right. I once had someone who said to me that there is no shame in continuing to find a place where you fit. And I think that's where I'm at with this.
Okay.
I believe that if we create more positive practices in our approach to change, that we will create better outcomes. So there's science and there's experience and there's also just this, just faith.
Yeah.
This will work if we do it, right? So I get it. There's a utopian kind of view here, but I don't care. I think that's the thing. I don't care. I'm unapologetic about it now.
You can't start a movement unless you're thinking. Yeah.
No, and again, like I'm not trying to create utopia. I'm just trying to create better outcomes.
Yeah.
And what I know is that doing the same thing we've always done isn't going to do that.
Yeah.
So what harm is there? I mean, I guess I'd ask you, those organisations who might kind of go, not sure about that, but what harm is there in doing it a little differently and seeing what happens? Because what I'm not saying is we're not going to plan for negative reactions. I'm not saying we're not going to make sure that we consider all of the risks. I'm not saying that we're not going to make sure that we've considered impact. I'm not saying any of those things. What I am saying is let's approach it differently. Let's create a muscle memory that associates planning for change with positivity rather than negativity and just see what happens. Maybe it's an experiment. It's not.
Is there a lack of control that comes with it though?
Yeah, but isn't there a lack of control?
Yeah, I know, but I think is that the point?
Yeah, it is.
It's the point of why this will be difficult is because there's some people that just won't be able to let or relinquish the control that they like to have on a project or they like to have on a program or they like to have on a change.
And the reality is they never had it to start with, right? There's always this messy middle. Change is never linear. All we ever really know is where we are now and where we want to be. The stuff that happens in the middle cannot be planned. That's one of the biggest fallacies, isn't it? That like you can set a plan and follow a plan. Like it never ever happens that way. But what you can do is you can give people ways of thinking that sets them up for success when things get messy so that they can make decisions more quickly. So yes, you have to kind of relinquish the ability to control. But if you have created capability in the areas that allow people to move through chaos and come out the other side with still aligned to the original intentions, then isn't that what you want?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Let's say we've got these organisations who have said, right, I'm going to give this opportunity. I'm going to think about change more positively. And then they start to iterate those changes within the organisation. What are some of those iterations? What are some of the small things that they can work on first that you would think, almost like low-hanging fruit, this is a good place to start. Just get this started and then come back for round 2.
Yeah, okay. I think, like I said, first place for me is to start thinking about not resistance but reaction.
Yeah, okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Do that first because if you're thinking about how people might react, then you're opening yourself up to a broader spectrum of opportunity. And some of the work that we're doing is around understanding like change personas. Like people react in different ways because they feel differently about their particular profession or practice, or they've, you know, got a different mindset or different experiences. You can use all of that in service of change if you understand it. So I think first thing is to start thinking about the people who are involved in change and understanding their reactions and the motivations behind those reactions, and thinking about how we could use them in service.
Yep.
Right. So that doesn't, I know that's not like a, you know, that's not a here's this template. Right.
Maybe I'm being too.
Maybe I need to get you on the
Oh,
record
absolutely.
then.
Well, yeah, you know me. I'm a strange thinker. But what does good change look like then? So let's say we've implemented this. We're positive. We're thinking. We're feeling good about where we're going, and we've just delivered. What is a good change project? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What are people experiencing when a change is delivered very well?
When change is delivered very well, they've had an opportunity to turn confusion into clarity, right? So we'd be probably silly to think that, you know, we were able to create clarity straight up. But in the circumstances where we haven't, that we've created opportunity for them to turn that confusion into clarity. I know what this is. I know what was behind it. I understand how it's likely to change the way I work and how I need to think differently. So I've had opportunity to understand the change for me as an individual. And the reason why I've had that opportunity is because my leader has created the right channels for me to ask questions and for me to interact with peers and other people who are involved so that I can get the information that I need. And what that means is that I feel like I'm part of this. You know, I don't feel like this is happening to me. I feel like this is a process that I'm part of. So I've engaged with it. And when I've raised concerns, I've not been met with just get on with it. I've been met with, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about it like that. Let me go talk to somebody and see what they might think. So genuine interest in my perspectives related to how this change might affect me or how it may be rolled out. So I feel considered and I feel included.
It gives you the warm sense of fuzzies, doesn't it? Like this change is moving forward and everyone is considerate.
Yeah, and if you think about times in the past where, you know, you've made a decision in your personal life that you might not think is the best decision. Like let's say your wife's decided, you know, you were going to do this thing and you're like, I'm not really sure. The best outcome for that is where you've had an opportunity to raise your concerns. And even if the decision stands, you're less likely to be grumbly about that because you've had the opportunity. And you go, all right, cool. Well, we've talked it through.
I've been heard.
You've been heard. So an opportunity to be heard and then an opportunity to be part of the process in which we move from here to next. When it comes to the actual kind of management of change-related activities, it feels like it's open. It's not we will dogmatically follow this plan to the detriment of anything and everything around us as, you know, things happen and change. It feels like the plan changed because it needed to. And I understood why. And I might have even been part of instigating that change. So again, I'm included.
Yeah.
It feels like all the different aspects have been considered. And at the end, when this new thing is implemented, it feels like it wasn't some mad rush to shove something in to some, you know, arbitrary deadline. It feels like it was a thought through process, even if it wasn't a great outcome for me. And I think that's our problem. Like we don't, again, change leading versus cheerleading. It doesn't have to be about being excited and positive about change. It just means being positive about how we approach the thinking and the planning behind it and making sure that we're creating opportunity for people to be part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because, like, I've been thinking about change for a long time now. Obviously, we run a business that specializes in it. And I've never thought about it when you said it's being open to the movement of it. And the Bruce Lee quote, be like water, exactly. It's the element of successful change is not just about the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the journey. It's about how we moved along the process. It's how we were able to change and pivot, using the words of today, in a way that is fun.
Yeah.
It's good. If we have to, if that's going to give the business and the community and our clients and our people the best outcome, then that's fine.
Yeah.
Let's make that change. And when leaders have that thought process and change makers have that thought process, the resistance just sort of falls away, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because everyone's just working together to get the outcome.
Yeah. I think some of the worst sort of change experiences I've been part of is where, a plan has been set and then we're all working towards that plan, even though we might know that it's not achievable. And, can count on 10 fingers and 10 toes the number of projects that I've been part of where you've had that experience. What's so deeply frustrating about it is that it feels like you're not heard. Hang on, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
And maybe that's where this positive change practice needs to come in is that, rather than us going, this feels like it's not going to work, we can't keep following this plan. What we should be thinking about is, okay, well, what do we need to achieve and by when?
Yeah.
And how could we do that? What needs to change in order for us to achieve those things? Yeah. So there's a shift that needs to happen actually in not just change leaders and change enablers, but in employees as well. And I think that that's where, a positive change practice as a kind of like a warm blanket around all of it means that you'll have people who are helping you solve your problems, who are not just raising grumbles and concerns, but are saying, here's how I think I can fix that. And the reason why I think I can fix that is because I've used a systems thinking approach to understand this situation and I can come up with some solutions that'll work. So it's there's all these component parts that needs to come together, I think, to create a better approach to change. And that's why I'm really excited, I think, about being able to create that.
So I want to think about wrapping this up in a sec. We've actually got to shoot off in a minute. Leaders listening in to this podcast, we have a lot of leaders, executives, leaders, change makers, all the above that listen in. They're a big part of our audience with the Creating Synergy podcast. They're listening in going, all those components that you just rattled off, I've got no idea where to start. I'm going to give Kylie a call. What does it look like when you would go into a business? What is using external consultant like yourself look and feel like as you would approach that situation?
Sure. Okay, well, I think first of all, we're creating a change framework that's based on systems thinking. So we would come into your organisation and actually explain that first and foremost. And then the second part we would do is identify where there might be some capability gaps to support that process. And then with a range of different kind of, learning interventions, offer some opportunities for us to increase that capability. Yeah. The best way that this is done is where we can come in and work alongside you and your people to implement change using a positive change practice and a systems thinking approach and teach people as we go. And those kinds of people are, change leaders and enablers, people who are going to actually be adopting the change, creating awareness and understanding of all the different capabilities that support it in the context of something you're actually trying to do right now. Yeah, I think that's how you create it. I mean, there's lots of times where people have gone to training courses and it's great. Yeah. They're great, but it's the actual application of it. Yeah.
I had a meeting with a client this morning and I think one of the positive feedback that I got from them was what they love about the approach that you work with them on is the simple fact that it is this co-creation. We don't believe that we're the experts in their business. But we know how to ask the right questions to get the results that they need, and we work with them to get there, as opposed to the just blanket rule of this is what we think's wrong or this is what you need to do and we recommend. It is let's work together to get there and get you the outcomes that you need.
So I think an organisation that wants to join the movement, join the movement.
Oh, I love it. This is the change movement.
I know, right? An organisation who wants to do things a little differently probably needs to have a similar mindset, you know, like let's get a little curious about what this is and appreciate the science that's behind it, the knowledge that's behind it, and be open to learning those capabilities inside our organisation, but also having the confidence that, you know, doing these things, approaching change differently, building capabilities in our people that we know will support better outcomes will result in better bottom line outcomes as well.
Oh, yeah, the return on investment. We haven't even started. That's another whole episode.
Whole other topic, yeah.
I am conscious of time because you've got to shoot off. If we were to wrap this up, well, we aren't wrapping this up. That's a silly comment. We're wrapping this up now.
We're wrapping it up.
Right? And you have one last thing. You go, right, my main core reason for coming on this show, the one message that I want everyone to walk away with about change or the change management or whatever it is, what is it? Because you've talked about thinking positively.
Yeah.
Is it the mindset towards change? What is the one thing that you go, right, that's it. Walk away with this and then you'll be one step better at change?
The one thing I want, I don't know if I want, you know, people to walk away with one thing.
Yeah,
it's you know, but what I would like in terms to, you know, to set a challenge, right, is to go, if you are part of change, any part of it, whether you have instigated it, whether you are part of enabling it within a project team, whether you're a project manager or a change manager, whether you are part of some of the other enabling functions like learning and development and communications and all of those different things that need to make things happen, whether you're an employee who's part of change, think about how often you respond to the suggestion of change with the negative. Just pay attention to it. That's it. Just do that first, nothing else. Because I guarantee that you will realise so quickly how often we start there first.
Yeah, we're starting off on the wrong foot.
And it's a bit, what's that thing where like when you know, want to buy a Hyundai, all of a sudden you see Hyundais? Yeah. I think that when you realise, like when you start looking for how often you respond in the negative or how often you start your planning in the negative, it will become evident that the shift is needed.
You'll hear the language everywhere.
Absolutely. Everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And then take that awareness and start flipping it.
And create your own movement within your own organisation.
Yeah.
I love it. Where do we get in contact with you? How do people find you? How do they get in contact with you? How do they learn more?
They can reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn.
Yep.
So Kylie Morton, if you Google search me on LinkedIn. Send me an email, kylie.morton@SynergyIQ.com.au.
Go from there.
Go from there.
Beautiful. Yeah. You can follow Kylie. She's going to be...
I'm going to bang on about this a bit now.
Yeah, I think the movement started. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you for all that you're doing. And look, you know, as a leader of the business of SynergyIQ, thank you for all the positivity that you're bringing into our workspace, right? And the benefits that you're bringing to the team are huge. And thank you for all the work that you're doing for the clients out there. I know they're all sitting there clapping their hands saying, you know, kudos, thank you. Great. It's really valuable. That's it from us. Thank you very much. We'll catch you next time.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the podcast all. You can check out the show notes if there was anything of interest to you and find out more about us at synergyiq.com.au. I am going to ask though, if you did like the podcast, it would absolutely mean the world to me if you could subscribe, rate and review. And if you didn't like it, that's all right too. There's no need to do anything. Take care, guys. All the best.